Hey everybody, today is January 24th. That means we're reading John chapter 18, verses 28 through 40. So last night we left with Jesus in the court at Caiaphas and Ananias' house. And so now they are leaving there and they're going to Pilate's house. And Pilate was the governor and he was a Gentile. And so it's important to know that when we come to verses, starting in verse 26, our reading today, we notice that John spent some detail there telling us that the Jews did not go into his house because they would be defiled. And it was Passover. It was that Friday evening was Passover. And so they couldn't go in because they would be defiled, and there wouldn't be enough time for them to cleanse themselves and to make themselves pure again. So they had to do all of this kind of outside in the courtyards. And so just kind of an interesting kind of history moment that we see there. But one of the biggest things that kind of stuck out to me, I know for many of us, we know these passages pretty well. We hear these leading up to the Easter story about Jesus being crucified. But one of the things that kind of stuck out at me is the answer where Pilate says, "Am I a Jew?" Your own people, right? The own Jewish nation, the leaders of the Jewish nation, says that you are a king. And Jesus answers this, and he said, he answers, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would have been fighting that I might not be delivered over you." And that kind of just struck me today as I was reading that, with the idea of thinking, wow, that is true, right? I mean, if his disciples were servants of this world, if Jesus was just a man, they would have fought for him. Yes, they were outnumbered. Yes, it was going against everything, but they would have fought for them. But because Jesus is not of this world, because Jesus is God, and God has already ordained for this event to happen, right? The crucifix has already been planned. We see it all the way back in the book of Genesis. And so we know that Jesus needs to die. And so we can see a part here of God's will in Jesus' answer. Jesus says, if I was just a man, my disciples, my friends would fight for me. But because I am God, because God's sovereign will must be played out, they're not fighting. They're staying back. They're withholding, even though if they don't know that they are, so that God's will can be done. And so that's kind of hit me that when I read that and was just thinking, of all the things that we always say that we should have done, we wish we would have done, if I ever have a chance, I can do that again. Maybe that's not God's will, right? Maybe when we look back and we say, I shoulda, coulda, woulda, maybe we are like a disciple, right? Right now, the disciples want to be him, right? Peter wanted to be with him, but Peter denied him 3 times. We looked at that yesterday, right? The disciples are scarce. They're scared. They've ran away. And all of those things are true, but yet that is the will of the Father, because he doesn't need them fighting for him. He needs Jesus to die, and that's what Jesus came to do. And so that just kind of struck me. I don't know if something else struck you or if that makes sense to you, but it's kind of almost a little nugget of truth of God's sovereignty in Jesus's answer to Pilate, right? He says that my kingdom is not of this world, and if it was, they'd be fighting for me. But because it's not, they're not fighting for me, giving a little proof that God's will is above all things. And so just kind of an amazing little nugget that I found personally tonight as I was reading this. But we can see at the very end that once a year, the Jews kind of had this annual tradition that on the night of Passover, they would let go one imprisoned person. And so Pilate thought he could get away with this because They would pick Jesus over Barabbas because Barabbas was a horrible, nasty guy. It says that he was a robber, but he's so much more. It was a horrible guy, but yet they chose the latter, right? They chose Barabbas, so he would have to do something about Jesus. And so, love that we're doing this. I know we're getting close. We're kind of starting our last week. Notice that today is Sunday, so that means our prayer focus is be praying for the visitors that's coming to church, that they would hear the gospel, that they would hear the call of salvation, the Holy Spirit would work in them, and that maybe even tonight or tomorrow you would invite somebody to church, maybe for the week after, whatever it is. Be praying for those who come to Green Acres as a visitor, but also those who need to hear the gospel. Guys, God bless, and we'll see you tomorrow.